Hey there. Welcome to episode 34 of Toy Talk with Mike and Chad. I'm Chad.
I'm Mike.
And I guess the part of our collection we're going to be talking about today is the new G.I. Joe Classifieds that we got.
We didn't get the complete wave. I've got 4 figures.
I got 3 figures.
You got 3. And there's still 2 figures that were both missing. One of them is Rock and Roll. And then the other one that's still missing is Scrap Iron. And yeah, besides these guys, like the G.I. Joes have been coming fast and furious.
These guys showed up. I think their street release date was September 1st for them, because Amazon guaranteed me to have them by September 5th.
But yeah, so besides these things, there was just more pre-orders that went up the other day. So now we have Tunnel Rat and Desert Commando Snake Eyes. So those guys are both pretty cool. So those both went up for pre-order. So I ordered both of those from Big Bad Toy Store.
Yeah.
You ordered them from Amazon or
Amazon, and also Cobra Eel.
Well, yeah, the Cobra Eel is technically an Amazon exclusive.
Yes.
So I had to go to Amazon and pre-order that as well. We both got 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Eel's like the Cobra Frogman, and he's a troop builder. So whenever I get the troop builders,
yeah, it's nice to have.
I'd like to buy 2 or 3 to have a little squad. But as I told you, my brother usually takes the troop builders off my hands. So yeah, I told him that I ordered these Amazon exclusive Eels, and he was like, "Ooh, do you have an extra one?" And yeah, so I'll end up giving him one of my Eels. And so again, before we move on to these 4 figures that we have in front of us, I do want to talk about the helicopter for a minute. Because I don't think we talked about it on?
We have not.
Yeah, so around the start of June, they announced they're doing a second Haslab for G.I. Joe. The first one was the Hiss Tank, which ended up being, so it's going to be huge. I don't know how big exactly. But I did pre-order that because the Hiss Tank is my favorite vehicle.
Yep.
The Hiss Driver is one of my favorite vintage figures from my childhood. And with the Kickstarter, it came with a Hiss Driver. But if you hit certain stretch goals, because they said, we need 10,000 people to back this for us to even make it. But if we get to 12,000, we'll throw in an extra figure. If you get to 15,000, we'll give you something else. So we got all the stretch goals with the Hiss Tank. So we're getting a Hiss Driver, a Hiss Gunner, which is another, the same figure in a different color. Then we're getting the female Hiss Driver. So we're getting 3 variations of the Hiss Driver, plus we're getting a Cobra Commander, plus we're getting a bunch of add-on weapons to the Hiss Tank. So it's a pretty cool package. And they've been teasing that they're going to do a second Haslab for a while. They revealed it, and it's the G.I. Joe Dragonfly Helicopter. Now, I'm not as passionate about the Dragonfly Helicopter. My brother, Doug, had it when we were kids. It's a cool vehicle, but I'm not really a vehicle guy. Mm-hmm. The Hiss Tank is the one G.I. Joe vehicle that I was guaranteed to get excited about. I like a lot of the G.I. Joe vehicles, but I really don't have the room for 6-inch 6-inch scale G.I. Joe vehicles. I have very few G.I. Joe vehicles on display in my toy room here, even though I have a whole lot of them. Most of them are in storage. So yeah, helicopter wouldn't have been my first choice, but it comes with Wild Bill, the pilot, who I want. And then they said there was potentially 3 more figures to add if we hit all the stretch goals. We've already hit the first stretch goal, which is Night Force Ripcord. Mm-hmm. So if you get it, you're guaranteed Wild Bill and Ripcord. They've now shown the next stretch goal, which is Glenda. And if we get to 19,000, they'll reveal a 3rd stretch goal. And yeah, so you messaged me the other day about Glenda. So did you know anything about her at all?
I didn't. I just thought it was a really random code name.
It is a random code name.
Codename Glenda.
Which is weird. All the G.I. Joe code names are things like Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Barbecue. Glenda's code name is Glenda. That's not her real name. That's her code name. I don't know why that is, but it's weird. But it was funny seeing the reaction online when this figure was revealed, because Joe fans were eagerly awaiting, what's going to be the next stretch goal, and everybody was counting down on Facebook and on the forums and stuff, we're only 500 away, we're probably going to hit it tonight, blah, blah, blah. And because you can go on Hasbro's website and you can see the number of pre-orders ticking up. So we hit 13,000, and it was radio silence from Hasbro for a day or so. And we're like, what's it going to be? And then they announced Glenda. And some of the Joe fans, myself included, were super stoked. I was like, that's an awesome choice and totally unexpected. And then a lot of Joe fans were also like, what the hell is that? I don't even know who this character is. Like, why would you put that there? That's not going to entice people to buy it. Which, I understand that argument. She is not a well-known character. But, I don't know. As a real hardcore Joe fan who knows kind of all the really deep cuts, I really appreciate it. And I think it looks great. Even if you don't know who she is, it's a really nice looking figure.
Yeah, like when you showed me the iterations of her throughout the years, and then like how she's going to look when she's released now, I was like, okay, that actually does look cool. It's it's a suited role because she's a helicopter co-pilot. So
yeah, like the thing of it is, like, I think I've talked about this on this channel before, but it's probably been a long time. But like when G.I. Joe kind of came back after it had been dormant for many, many years, came back in 2002 when I was like in my early 20s or so, and I was excited to collect G.I. Joe again as an adult collector. And that was, now we had the internet. The internet didn't exist when I collected toys as a kid. So now all of a sudden you were on the internet, you were reading about G.I. Joes, G.I. Joe websites were popping up, and you started learning about all these like international G.I. Joe figures that you had no idea ever existed. And they became highly sought after collectibles as people learned about them. So different companies, like over in the UK, G.I. Joe was called Action Force, and it was a company called like Palatoy made them and all this sort of stuff. And so people wanted to get the G.I. Joe characters from North America, but with the UK packaging that said Action Force, and like Fun School produced figures in India, and they looked a lot like the American ones, except their colors were a lot brighter sometimes. And anyway, it's very cool stuff. So yeah, it was in Argentina. They took the original Scarlet figure from 1982, except instead of red hair, they gave her blonde hair, and instead of like a tan and blue outfit, they gave her like a teal and silver outfit. They called her Glenda, and they changed her file card to say she wasn't a, I forget what they called Scarlet, like a martial artist or something, intelligence officer. Anyway, Glenda was a helicopter pilot, and in the modern line of the 4-inch one, they kind of paid homage to Glenda by giving us a Scarlet figure in Glenda's colors, but they didn't go all the way and giving us a modern Glenda. So yeah, this is the first time Glenda's ever really been released in any form in North America, and I think it's awesome. So I'm super excited. I hope we get her. Right now, we're creeping up to 14,000. We're still a few hundred away, but yeah, it didn't create like a rocket effect. So yeah, there's probably a lot of people that are still scratching their heads about the choice. But
now, in your experience with like Hasbro Pulse, Haslabs, if the sales are slow to pick up to reach Glenda, would they typically reveal the next unlock just to kind of boost interest a little more?
I don't know. They probably won't do it anytime soon. Like, maybe they were expecting a big burst as soon as they released Glenda. Yeah. Obviously, we didn't get that. But I still think they're going to make us wait. And I don't think they would, like, let's just say nobody else subscribes from this day forward. I don't think they would let the deadline, which is mid-July, pass and say, well, I guess you guys will never know what the next stretch goal is. They will definitely dangle it before to entice people to try and sign up. Okay, so do you want to talk about the figures we actually have?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so we got 4 new figures. Let's start with Bazooka. So this guy here we both got. This was cool. This was probably the one I was least excited about because we already got Tiger Force Bazooka earlier this year. You didn't get that one, though, did you?
I didn't, because you told me they were releasing this one, so you told me to hold off because he's more cartoon accurate. So.
Yeah, if you don't need Tiger Force, then yeah.
I don't.
Then yeah, go with this one because this is the look from the original toy from, I think, 85. And yeah, this is what he wore in the cartoon. This is what he wears in the comic books, all that sort of stuff. The Tiger Force is kind of the sub-team variant. It's weird that we got the Tiger Force version first. The same thing happened with Recondo. We still don't know about a regular Recondo yet, but I'm sure it's coming. Anyway, I loved this figure when we got it in Tiger Force. I think it is better now. Bazooka is not really one of my favorite characters, partly because I think they portrayed him as such a big oaf on the cartoons. So that kind of diminished him a little bit for me. Plus, I'm not a sports guy, so the guy running around the football jersey didn't really appeal to me when I was a kid. Plus, his name is Bazooka. And I don't know anything about bazookas. This seems to be a good size bazooka that he comes with. But the vintage toy just came with like... The bazooka was about half this size. It was like a little bazooka. And the original Bazooka Trooper from 1982 was named Zap. And he came with the big, long bazooka that you put on your shoulder. So that was another thing I always thought, okay, so this is the guy that comes out like 3 years later. They were usually like improving characters and doing bigger and better versions of maybe specialties that had come before. But I felt Bazooka got kind of the short end of the stick because he just gets his little dinky bazooka compared to Zap. But they've corrected that now. Now he has a big, what I would consider a full-size bazooka. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this fellow?
My thoughts are I absolutely love this guy because I am a sports fan. So the jersey always appealed to me. I do have the same opinion about how they portrayed him in the cartoon. The other thing is my dad was in the army for many years, so I've been around like real live bazookas at like military air shows and stuff like that where they had all these on displays. So he kind of spoke to me. One thing I will mention, though, is I found he was really hard to pose because on some of the action shots they come with, it shows him holding his bazooka on his shoulder and the other arm reaches the peg here to actually hold it.
Oh, really?
That's not fucking possible, let me tell you. I tried, and it just looks dumb. Like, it doesn't fit up on his shoulder, and the arm doesn't reach that far. So, I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah, I get it.
I got my feelings, but David L. Katzenbogen.
Yep.
Codename Bazooka.
And you're on a first-name basis with your Joes.
Some of them, yeah.
Stuart.
Like, I like the option of the helmet, so that was kind of nice. He was one of the ones that I was looking forward to.
Yeah, like the removable helmet's nice. And like Joe's and the vintage Joes always had removable helmets too. But either their hair was really flat, like almost just like a black paint over a bald head, or if they had sculpted wavy hair, like say General Hawk, the helmet sat really big because it had to fit around the hair.
Like Dusty's helmet.
But they've done a really good job now
this fits.
The hair has sculpting detail to it. Like they all have their own unique hairstyles under there, and the helmet doesn't look oversized at all. This guy, he's got the same accessories as the Tiger Force version, but he's got his missiles are painted. He's got a couple specialty missiles there, which are kind of cool. Like, what does it say on there? Like this one here is like, it's got.
It's the radioactive one.
Yeah, it's like a radioactive. I'll do a close up so you guys can see it. Doesn't one of the other ones say something? I think?
It should have like a.
Yeah, this one's got like a. What is that? A
flame, maybe. They look like teeth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the tiger. That's like the mouth of it, like you would see on the side of a plane or a helicopter. So yeah, just that extra little painted detail is pretty cool. So 2 of his 4 missiles or projectiles or whatever you call these things has like painted detail on them. So yeah, so very cool. And like I said, I'm going to splice in some side-by-sides with him and his other version. So maybe we'll do that now, and then we'll be back to look at the other figures. So here's a closer look at Bazooka. Now before I talk about the figure itself, I just want to quickly talk about the packaging. So the packaging is similar to what we've seen on the last few waves of figures. You can see it's a sealed box. So they don't have the window where you can actually see the action figure inside of the box. A lot of people don't really care for that, and Hasbro has recognized that, and they apparently are making a switch back to boxes with plastic windows soon enough. But anyway, for the short period that we did not have windows, we were getting all this very stylized artwork. Some of it worked better than others. Like, I don't dislike this art, but it's kind of busy. I find Bazooka kind of blends into the background a little bit there. I don't think this does a very good job of selling the figure. You get a little teeny shot of the figure down here, then 2 different images. You get the same image on this side of the box. On the back, you have a clear shot of the figure and all of his different accessories. And then on the side there, you just get the number of the figure along with some little symbols to represent his military specialty. So even though these 4 figures that we're talking about today are all part of the same wave, it is notable that they changed the style of the boxes after Bazooka. So Bazooka has the kind of, very stylized, different artists doing the artwork. You're going to see different boxes when we take a look at the other figures. Anyway, we'll get rid of this here for now. And now we will focus on Bazooka. So yeah, I think he looks great. That's a really nice head sculpt. A lot of personality in the face. The way his mustache is just ever so tilted, like he's kind of sneering there. And if we pop his helmet off, you can see he's got, a nicely kept little haircut. One or two little stray hairs maybe. But yeah, he looks good. The football jersey, it works relatively well. Now that they have these like splits in the middle of the torso, when you've got a figure like this with the numbers on there, that can be a bit of a problem when you're trying to turn him. But, it works about as well as it could, I guess. It looks good from the front on. I'm not going to bother talking about articulation on any of these figures because you've heard it all before. But all the G.I. Joe classified figures move really well, with the double jointed knees and elbows and all that sort of stuff. Really good range of motion. So yeah, the sculpting, the paintwork on this guy is all really good. You can see here he's got a good sized bazooka. It's got some paint apps on the gun itself, so it's black and green. The backpack is just solid green, but here's a closer look at those missiles that we were talking about earlier. So this one here has got kind of a, I don't know if it's a radioactive symbol or something on there. And then this one here has got the kind of painted on teeth with a little eyeball on there too, I guess. So that's kind of cool. And they can all be stored on his backpack. You'll also see he has a hook on the bottom of his backpack, so you could loop his gun through there and store his bazooka on his back if you wanted to. Now, if I bring out the Tiger Force version, we can do a quick little side-by-side. You can see here they're the exact same figure. They haven't changed anything. The accessories are all the same. So yeah, it's just, I guess, a matter of preference. I'm a sucker for the original one, but I really like the Tiger Force one as well. And this is actually my first Tiger Force Bazooka. There have been two previous versions of Tiger Force Bazooka, and I don't have either of them. So let's go back in time a little bit and take a look at my past Bazooka figures. This is the vintage Bazooka from my childhood that came out in 1985. This is the little Bazooka that I was talking about. So it seemed like, I assume it's based on a real world, bazooka, but it's just kind of a small little thing like this that you can throw over his shoulder. It's not like the big crazy bazooka that I'm familiar with. And, on the backpack, he has those missiles. I'm pretty sure those were all green, and I think I might have painted those myself with marker back in the day. But they weren't removable on the vintage figure. And, yeah, if we pop his helmet off, you can get a little bit of sense of his hair was a little flatter. Not as detailed, but still a really solid figure. I think this guy holds up quite well. Anyway, they repainted that figure a couple years later in the Tiger Force colors, which I never got. And then I think there was another version late into the 90s. My next bazooka came in the early 2000s. This was from 2004. So they've changed up his look quite a bit. He's much more military looking. He doesn't have the football jersey. He has a gigantic bazooka that is comically sized. His mustache, it's a little Frencher maybe than the other guys. So it's a different style for him. This guy, he was mostly reused parts from a Flash figure or Grand Slam figure, I think. But, it still works pretty well. It doesn't really scream bazooka to me, but it's not a bad figure. Then in the modern era, we got this bazooka. It looks pretty good, although the helmet fits him a little silly. But he has the removable missiles. That was the first time we saw that. His bazooka can also be stored on the back of his backpack, so this is the first time we saw all those details. So yeah, he looks pretty good like that in the 4-inch scale. Then they redid this one in Tiger Force colors, but that was a convention exclusive, and it was very expensive and hard to get. And every now and again I would chase down exclusive figures and I'd pay big bucks. But because Bazooka was not one of my favorite characters, I did not bother seeking that one out. And then we did get this repaint in kind of a unique baby blue color scheme a couple years later. And, it's interesting in its own right. Now, you would think that it's just a repaint of this figure, but you can see, I think, when you see them side by side, like the torso joint on this guy is much lower, so his number 14 isn't split in half. He's got different knee pads and stuff, so I'm not sure which one is the more successful build. Probably this one because it came later, but I do like the classic color scheme on this guy. So yeah, all in all, Bazooka, really solid figure. Really glad we got him. Highly recommend it. All right, so why don't you take the lead on the next guy? Who do you want to talk about?
All right. Next one I'll talk about is Copperhead. I think out of the wave, he was the best one.
Yeah.
I just really like the face sculpt on this. Like, super serious look to him. He's got, like, a lot of articulation in his neck. One of the things I find with some of the Joes is some of them are really stiff, some of them aren't. Just the overall color scheme of this guy, and like he's super simple, but it works.
Yeah. Did you have him when you were a kid?
I want to say my brother had this one.
He came packaged with the Cobra water moccasin, which was like a little speedboat type of thing.
Then yes, we absolutely did have it. We had a couple like random vehicles.
Yeah.
I want to say this was my brother's.
Yeah, I like Copperhead a lot too. I think, if memory serves, like when he appeared in the cartoons, he had kind of like a bayou accent.
Yeah.
Like he was a swamp
Louisiana.
people. Yeah. And I also I always thought he seemed like he should have been a buffer character. Mm-hmm. Like in the vintage toy line, all the Joes were kind of the same build. In the more the Generation 3, 4-inch stuff, we started getting like bigger sculpts. So guys like Roadblock and Gung Ho were big and beefy. And Copperhead was a bit beefier in those figures, but like I was kind of hoping he would be a little bigger than this. But I think he's pretty good. It still looks pretty good.
One thing I will say is I wish they would have given the option to take off the helmet. Just because I've become so accustomed to G.I. Joe Classified since I've started collecting them, where they have the option to take off the helmet or like an alternate head or something.
I get that, but at the same time, sometimes it takes away from the mystique a little bit. You know, like when you first saw Darth Vader under that helmet, or when you first saw Boba Fett, you're like, that's what he looks like under there? Like, it's hard to say that Darth Vader's as cool as you thought he was in the first two Star Wars movies when you saw he's just like a bald, old man under there. You know? And so, like, there's something about not knowing what these dudes look like.
I think it's the simplicity that makes it work, though.
Yeah, but, like, he is a great figure. My brother Doug had him when we were kids. Doug had the water moccasin. There was a Python Patrol version of Copperhead, so I can pretty much guarantee that he's going to be repainted in his Python Patrol colors. I like his accessories. He's got this big, huge machete, which makes sense for him swamp living. He's got like a shock, or what would you call this? Like a magnum or something?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about guns, but he's got like a...
It's got a scope on it, so I thought that was cool.
It's almost like a Megatron.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's got like a special holster. That plugs into his back, and then he's got a little pistol too. This does annoy me though. I don't like this thing. Like, he's got a holster with a little strap that folds down and plugs into a hole. But those things don't ever stay sealed.
No, they don't.
So like, if you're gonna do that, like, do it so it works, because now he's just always gonna have this flap that's always up. You know, I'd be tempted almost to just cut it off because it looks a little weird.
I was just about to say that,
but I couldn't bear to do that, so I'll just have to hope it snaps off on its own, because I'm not going to alter it. But yeah, I think it's a super solid figure, and he's the only Cobra out of this batch. Now, mind you, we'll get Scrap Iron eventually, which I think is going to be another awesome figure. But out of these four, yeah, Copperhead being the only bad guy here, he kind of gets a leg up in that.
Yeah, I lean more towards the Cobra guys anyway.
Yeah, me too, generally. One thing, as I fiddle around with him here, he's got these straps on his arm.
I don't know what they do.
Well, I don't necessarily know if they serve a functional purpose either, but I think that the design is probably true to the vintage figure, so I'm glad they're there. But it's one of those things that, like, they probably already had these bare arms from, like, Sergeant Slaughter or something.
Yeah, let's add something.
And so it makes sense that they would just reuse the bare arms they have and then put this little strap as a separate piece of plastic. But the strap slides around. Like, it does this on... I have some Marvel Legends where they added, like, cuffs to boots. But then, instead of sitting at the top of somebody's boot, the cuff just dangles around their ankle like a little anklet. And it really doesn't work. Like, if they're going to put this as a separate piece of plastic, like, obviously they save some money by not sculpting a whole new upper arm. But, like, they should glue this in place. So I don't have to worry about it sliding around. Mm-hmm. Anyway, solid figure. I'm going to splice in a closer look at him here in a second, and we'll be right back. So here is a closer look at Copperhead. And before we look at the figure, I want to talk a little bit about the box. So you see here, this is the new style of box I'm talking about, which will be short-lived because we're going to get the plastic window boxes back soon. But instead of the very stylized art taking up the whole front of the box, now we get a nice shot of the figure itself on the front of the box. There's a little bit of artwork there, but now you get a little shot of all the different accessories that are included, a shot of the figure on the side. You know, we've kind of changed the way we're displaying the numbers and all that sort of stuff. On the back, you get another shot of the figure and the accessories, and then a bigger shot of the artwork on the side. So, a little different format than what we've seen in the past. Seems like Hasbro has been experimenting a lot with the boxes. But anyway, we're not here for boxes. We're here for the action figure. So let's take a closer look at him. So as I mentioned earlier, the original Copperhead came out in 1984, and my brother Doug had that original figure. And then they repainted him into Python Patrol colors a little bit later on in the vintage toy line. I never had either of those two figures, and I still don't to this day. So I don't have any of the vintage Copperheads to bring out and show you. But this guy looks great. He looks a lot like that vintage figure. The colors are pretty much spot on. Really nice detailing there. So the helmet is not removable, but you get a sense of the guy underneath the mask there with his eyes. He's got the little breather hose on the front. On the back, this is the gun that can be holstered that I said earlier looks kind of like a Megatron. But here we have two instances of these straps I was talking about earlier. So you see how this strap has a little peg on it, and it's supposed to wrap around and plug into this little hole there. Now, I might be able to get it in the hole like so, but it's not inclined to stay there. It just doesn't really happen very well. And then we've got the one on this side as well. So this one, you have to be able to fold it over and tuck it. It's hard for me to do this by looking through the screen, but you want to tuck that into the little hole there. And it's a hard thing to get to stick. So that's why I'm saying that these straps are just going to end up be dangling like that. It doesn't look very good. So I wish Hasbro would figure out a better way to lock those in place so you don't have to worry about it just constantly hanging loose like that. But that's really my only gripe about the figure. I think he looks great otherwise. He's got the machete on his belt, which is probably pretty dangerous to have that exposed blade like that, but fortunately for us, it's not actually sharp, so no harm there. But yeah, it stores on there pretty well, although now I gotta wrestle with it to get it back in there. There we go. But yeah, he looks pretty cool. You can see there he's got a tattoo of Ace of Spades on his forearm. It's pretty cool. And then these straps on his arm, as I mentioned before, they do just kind of slide around, so they could potentially fall off of his arm, which is a little annoying, but it's not too bad. I think if you tuck them up there, they kind of fit pretty snug over his muscles there. So I think they'll be alright. This one's sliding down a little bit too. So yeah, this is the kind of thing, like, if I had these figures when I was a kid and I wanted to play with them, I would probably be pretty annoyed if these things were constantly sliding out of place. As an adult collector, he's just going to go on a shelf on display, so it doesn't bother me so much. But still, I wish Hasbro had taken it upon themselves to kind of glue those into place, so I didn't have to worry about it. And then he's got one other little pistol in his hand, which can be holstered there. Now, for comparisons, before we move on, I do have some modern era Copperheads. So this was the first Copperhead that came out in the Generation 3, kind of like 4-inch figures. And this is the first time Copperhead was portrayed as being a little buffer than the average figure. He's a little taller than the other figures in the line. And he's done in those classic colors. Looks pretty good. You can see how these guys match up pretty well. And then we got a Python Patrol repaint. Now this Python Patrol version isn't quite as like garish looking as the vintage one. You know, I think the vintage one was full body, like green with yellow patchwork over top of it. This one here, they've kind of toned it down. He's got a black tank top and just the kind of like checkered pants. So he looks pretty cool. And then there was this one other version I got. I don't think he's supposed to represent anything in particular. This was just an excuse to repaint the figure and release him again. There was one other version released in the 4-inch line that I did not get. But yeah, in total, I think there was 8 Copperhead figures released at the smaller size. And yeah, this is the first one at 6 inches, and he's pretty awesome. Definitely the best Copperhead figure we've ever gotten. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about
Scuba Steve.
Yeah, so that's exactly what Vanessa said when I brought this guy home. She's like, it's Scuba Steve from the Big Daddy movie, which that's a very dated reference at this point. Yeah, Adam Sandler movie, Big Daddy. But anyway, so you did not get this guy.
No.
Hopefully you get him soon, because I think he's awesome. So this is Torpedo. This is the original, like, G.I. Joe diver, frogman.
Yeah.
So he came out in like 83, and my brother Doug had him. He looks good. He's wearing, his outfit is very true to like the vintage figure. His accessories, he's got the flippers that are removable. He's got a spear gun. He's got a regular like machine gun, and then he's got the scuba mask, which is removable. So
I like that.
Yeah. Now even the vintage figure, the mask was removable, but underneath he had a mask, and all you could see was his eye holes. So like he didn't have a mouth or a nose. So now you can see his whole face opened up, which gives him a little bit more personality. And he's got a knife that can be sheathed on his leg there. I just love it because it's so different from what we've been getting so far. Like, G.I. Joe's been, you know, they've been leaning a lot into the soldiers and all that sort of stuff. We haven't got a whole lot of the specialties yet. Like, we've got Snow Job coming. And with the helicopter, we've got some paratroopers coming. And now we're getting the, you know, underwater guys. Because there was a lot of that in G.I. Joe. We got outer space guys and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, but it's been very kind of basic military so far. So I like that we're starting to get some of these specialties. Anyway, I know you haven't had a chance to play with him yet, but what do you think?
I haven't. I love the face mask here. Like, yeah, I would agree with you. Just like, obviously, I don't want to be a poser and know what I'm talking about here, but I don't really remember him a lot.
Yeah.
I did see the vintage figure. Ever since you told me of that website,
Yojo.com.
I've been going there and I've been looking at some of the alternate versions throughout the years, and like it's fascinating to see some of the improvements over them. I really love this harpoon gun. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Now you'll see this if you go on Yojo.com. There was a version of him released in the early 2000s where they actually gave him like a land version. So he had like a knit cap and like just like green fatigues or whatever. Like, so you could actually put him on the Jeep or something. He didn't seem so out of place. That was one thing that I wouldn't say it bothered me as a kid. I just kind of rolled with it. But like, we would play, me and my brother, we'd play in our bedroom and we'd set up different environments. We'd usually put like a blue blanket on the floor and say that's the water part. And then we might have like a white blanket up top of the bed and that's the Arctic. But we'd use Torpedo and Snow Job no matter where we were terrain-wise. It's not like we only used him when we were playing underwater. It's like he'd be riding around on the Jeep, you know, fighting Cobra in his wetsuit. Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
Flippers on.
Well, you can take the flippers off, thankfully. But, yeah, like, so it's kind of weird, and I think some people were really bothered by that. Like, they should give us a standard version of all these characters. I don't really need that. I'm happy with Torpedo like that, but if they decided to give me a land version of Torpedo, I'd be happy with that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I do like him a lot, but he would be my number 2 out of this wave, I think.
Yeah. Now, the second G.I. Joe Frogman was named Wetsuit, and he was the one I had as a kid, and he was much more colorful. He had kind of like a teal and orange outfit, and he had cooler accessories because he had like a little motorized thing with lights on it that pulled him around underwater and stuff. So now that they've got the basic wetsuit body, I'm hoping that means wetsuit is pretty much a lock. Although I really hope they give us a unique head sculpt for wetsuit, because the vintage figure, he had a different style helmet. Like this guy here, he's just got the little breather with the goggles that slide over. But more like wetsuit's mask was more like the eel. It was like a whole helmet that had like lights on it, and it made him look almost like outer space. Like it was a cooler helmet. But in the like modern 4-inch line, the wetsuit was just a repaint of Torpedo with the same style mask here, the breather. And I was always dissatisfied that I'm like, that's not a true update to wetsuit. Wetsuit has to have his space-looking helmet. So I'm really hoping that we get a proper update of wetsuit in the classified line. But yeah, super solid figure.
Yeah.
So let's cut in a close-up, and then we'll be back. So here's a closer look at Torpedo. So first up, I'll just show you the box. So we got a really nice picture of the figure on the front, along with, you can see all of his accessories there, and then a little bit of artwork of the character there as well. Now, I bought this figure a couple of days ago now, and I glanced at the boxes, but I didn't really look at them in any detail. Literally, when I set the box here on camera to start filming this, I realized that they put these tube worms in the background, which is really awesome. That is straight out of an episode of the cartoon, one of my favorites, when they have to go all over the world to chase down these different elements, and one of them is underwater, and Torpedo and some of the other guys have to go underwater, and they encounter these like long eel things that come out of these, or like rock tubes, and yeah, they get all tangled up. So anyway, that's really funny that they would put those on the box. That's awesome. Anyway, you get the same artwork of Torpedo on the side, and then a picture on the back that shows all of his gear and how his gear attaches to him there. So that's pretty cool. But now let's move on to the figure. So as I was saying earlier with Chad, this is my favorite figure out of this wave. I just think he's really cool, and he's just so different from what we've got before. Like his flippers, they look really cool, and they come off. So they just they're kind of soft, rubbery. He just steps out of them like that. But they still have holes in them, so that way if you do have them on his feet, it doesn't deter you from putting him on a display base. Not that he comes with a display base, I wish that he did, but anyway, one thing that's nice about characters with flippers is you usually don't need a display base for them, because the flipper gives them such a good surface area on the bottom that it gives them a good enough base that they stand up very well on their own. Anyway, then he's got the spear gun and the backpack. He's got another like machine gun there. He also has a knife that is just sheathed on his leg, but that is removable as well. Now the backpack, you had to plug that, or the mask you plugged into the backpack on either side. That is detachable, so you can take the mask off entirely. I really like that we can see his face here, because Torpedo, according to his file card, he is supposed to be Hawaiian. And I think that face sculpt kind of portrays that. You can kind of see the ethnicity in the sculpt. So that's really cool. Now, I actually have not put the mask on this figure since I bought it. So let's see how that looks. Just slides over like so. Plug these two things in the back of the backpack. And there you go. Now he's got his oxygen. He can breathe. And he looks great. Very cool. Definitely a solid figure. Let's put this flipper back on him here. And yeah, this opens up a lot of options. Like already we're getting the Cobra Eel, who I'm sure will use a lot of the same parts. And I imagine we'll get Wetsuit sometime soon. And then who knows from there. They could give us other characters like Duke, who appeared in the dive outfit at various times. We've also got some other G.I. Joe divers like Depth Charge. So yeah, lots of possibilities now that we've got this base figure. Very cool. So my brother Doug had the vintage Torpedo when we were kids, but I do have one of my own now, although he's missing some of his accessories. Or maybe he's not. I've got his spear gun. His flippers I've got over here, and he's also got his little backpack. But one problem with my Torpedo here is he is broken. The O-ring has rotted away in there. So a lot of my vintage Joes are in this state, unfortunately. But he looks pretty good. So yeah, I think I am missing a mask. Or you know what, I might even be remembering it wrong. Now that I've got him in hand and I see that the breather is kind of part of the sculpt, and I don't see any holes in his backpack, I don't think he came with any sort of hoses or anything in the vintage line. So I was just misremembering when I was talking about that earlier. Because Wetsuit, he definitely had those types of hoses. So maybe that's what I was thinking about. Anyway, so that's the vintage Torpedo. I do have another Torpedo figure which came out in the late 90s. This guy was from 1998. So this guy here, he doesn't have his mask on. So you're seeing his face for the first time. And I don't really think this version looks very Hawaiian. So I'm glad that they kind of gave him a darker complexion and everything on the newer figure. Now this one here, I don't know exactly what he's wearing, but it still looks like it's supposed to be a wetsuit, like he's got these hoses and stuff. So he looks a little more fit for land combat than this version. But in 2002 or 2003, we did get a full land version of Torpedo, which I showed you a picture of earlier. I do have that figure. I couldn't find it. I was rooting around through my bin of 2000 era G.I. Joes for like 10 minutes, and I couldn't find him in there, so I gave up. But that was a pretty cool figure. Then in the modern era, the 4-inch scale, we have a few versions of Torpedo as well. So this is the first one that came out. He's also got the removable flippers, the spear gun. He has a removable mask. This also might have been partly what confused me when I was thinking about the vintage figure, because this guy has a face that you can expose when you take his mask off. Again, doesn't really look particularly Hawaiian because he is very pale. But this was a very cool figure, very true to the original. Then we got that same figure painted over in yellow colors. Not really sure why, but you know, we did see G.I. Joes in yellow in the animated series, but I think that was usually reserved for other characters like Duke. I don't think Torpedo appeared in yellow. I think he was often colored blue. But anyway, this is still a cool figure. I like that color scheme. And then we got this version of Torpedo, which is really just a Cobra eel, kind of painted to look like Torpedo. So even though it looks cool, it's probably my least favorite of these because it's the least Torpedo-like. Anyway, very cool figures. I love this new one from Classified. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about him for now.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back. Just had a little brain freeze. So the next guy we got was Shipwreck and his little friend Polly. I was trying to think of the word parrot. There we go. Yeah, Polly. I like this figure. I have a thing for pirates and like skeletons and stuff. He just gives off a super pirate vibe to me. I'm interested to know why you displayed him without his hat, though.
Well, I think I was just showing Vanessa. Vanessa came down here the other day and she was looking at my figures and she saw him and she kind of made fun of him because she said he looks like a village person. And then she says, and why does he just have like a toupee at his feet? I'm like, well, that's because you can display him with his hat or without.
Without, okay. I understand now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a solid figure. I like him. I have mine with the hat on.
Yeah, and just so you guys know what we're talking about, because, again, you'll see it when I do the close-up, but rather than give us, like, a removable hat for him, because he wears the little typical white sailor cap, Hasbro, you know, they said that they couldn't really make the hat believable in size or anything to fit over his hair. So what they've done is you can take his whole hair off. They did the same thing with Lady J a couple of waves ago, where they gave her two alternate styles. One hair is like a ball cap with the hair feathered out underneath, and then the other one is just like her windblown hair. So with Shipwreck, yeah, they didn't really have to do that. I don't think anybody needed a Shipwreck without his hat on, but I appreciate that they did it. So it's pretty cool.
I displayed him with the parrot on the arm, just like the box did.
Yeah, because he's got a little hole on his wrist.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can either display Polly on his wrist or on his shoulder, because there's a little peg on Polly's foot and there's a hole on the shoulder and on the wrist. which is the vintage one just had a clip. So you could only clip it on his wrist. It wouldn't clip anywhere else. Some of the modern versions, they did give you a similar option. So, yeah, I like both versions. So yeah, besides the hairpiece, he's got Polly. This rope that's strung around him there, that's removable. Mm-hmm. Then he's got like a pistol. He's got a pistol, and he's got 2 types of pistols. Yeah. I don't know what you call it.
I would call that just like a
flint
old
stock.
School, yeah.
I don't know what that even means, but yeah, like I think looks like you'd have to stuff that full of gunpowder or something.
Which is part of the draw for me, because that's what pirates used.
And he has a holster for that one on the back. And then he has this hook, which is kind of awkward, because like I think it was dating all the way back to the vintage figure. I think the vintage figure came with a hook on a string, so you could cast it out. And some of the modern versions had that as well. This one here, they've given us a hook, and you can store it. I assume that's what that thing is for on his belt. Or this rope around his torso also has a little hook on it, which I think you could hook the hook there.
Yeah, you can.
Which would make sense.
That's where I originally put it.
But, you can't do anything. It's not functional now. Like, the old ones was just a string. So I think that's kind of strange. Like, I guess it's good they gave it to us. You don't have to use them. If you don't want to, you can throw them in your spare parts bin. I have 2 things with this figure. For one, I think it's his face is really detailed. Mm-hmm. And it's weird for me to see some of these G.I. Joes that I had as a kid, and I played with those toys to death when I was a kid, that their faces are glued into my face. But a lot of their faces in the vintage line were very simple. They almost looked like Lego faces to some degree, because their eyes, there was no white in their eyes. Their eyes were all just like a kind of a line with a little circle in it. Mm-hmm. And, they didn't have any 5 o'clock shadow. They were very plain, simple faces. And now in this modern line, we're getting like stubble, and we're getting like real personalities. And I remember with Tomax and Zaymont, when they came out, it was weird to see them. Like, these guys finally look like real people. And it's a little jarring almost. Shipwreck, I have a vision of him in my head of what he's supposed to look like from the vintage toy. And this guy here, he looks gaunt. Like his cheeks are kind of sunk in. He looks kind of skinny and surly. And I don't think I dislike it. It's just weird because he's not the Shipwreck I'm used to seeing. Yeah. He looks unfriendly. And Shipwreck was always kind of a jovial character. So I kind of think that maybe he should look a little more chipper. Yeah.
How are the lips on him, though?
Yeah, he doesn't have... None of these figures. For a couple of waves, like the Dusty figure and Lieutenant Falcon.
Oh, yeah. Like, super...
They had really, red lips, and it looked like they were wearing lipstick, so I'm glad it looks like Hasbro might have corrected that. None of these guys have lip problems. He's got the hair on his chest. We talked about that when we first saw this item go up for pre-order.
It's going to be actual hair.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not fuzzy, but they did paint hair on his chest. He's got tattoos on his arms.
Yeah.
No arm hair, though, which is a little strange. Yeah. If you've got that hairy chest, you'd expect there to be some hair on your arms. But anyway, my biggest gripe about this figure is Polly.
Yeah.
So, Polly's fine. The vintage Polly looked almost identical to this, just a little bit smaller. It was just this little shape clipped onto his wrist. And some of the Pollys in the modern line looked just like that. And then there was 1 or 2 of them that were sculpted with their wings out like this. But there was no articulation on them. But in the classified line, first we got Timber.
Yep.
Who, for the first time ever, was fully articulated. Timber's got, 10, 12 points of articulation on him. Each leg has got, this is Snake Eyes' wolf. So he's got all these points in his leg. His tail moves, his head moves, and his neck moves. He's got, multiple. And then Spirit's eagle, Freedom. They gave Freedom, alternate wings. So you could display him with his wings tucked at his side for when he's sitting on Spirit's shoulder. Or he's got big soaring wings. And you could actually, kind of flap them so you could display them different ways. He was an articulated figure. I don't know why they cheaped out on poor Polly. Polly is the character with the most personality of all the animals. Because Polly actually talked in the cartoon. And she sometimes saved the day. If he was stuck in a jail cell, he'd send Polly to go get the keys. And, here are your keys, here are your keys. It's I feel he got kind of shortchanged here that he's just a hunk of plastic. They should have given him wings to articulate.
It's a really good parrot impression.
Thank you.
Here are your keys.
Yeah, that's what he sounded like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad they gave us Polly. Obviously, it wouldn't be Shipwreck if there wasn't a Polly, but yeah, should have been articulated.
I would have been okay if the rope didn't come off, too.
Yeah.
I find it, like, obviously you're not going to be playing with it, but, well, I would assume. Yeah. But if you move it around, it's, like, really loosey-goosey and just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Would have been a nicer sculpt on, or maybe a tighter fit so that it didn't.
That was a problem we saw a lot with because the vintage G.I. Joes of the 80s, they all had unique sculpts.
Yeah.
So all the details on their chest, whether it was like badges or medals or buttons or grenades, it was all just part of the sculpt. Nothing moved. In the modern line, with the figures were a little more detailed, they all had removable web gear. Mm-hmm. So like if a vintage figure had straps on its chest, the new version had straps that were removable.
Yeah.
Which sometimes was cool, but other times it made for like things that kind of floated awkwardly on them. When you put the backpack on, the peg would go through and that would make their vest kind of come up awkwardly. That I think it works a lot better in this scale, but you still occasionally run into things like this that it almost would have been better if it was just part of the sculpt. Because the fact that it floats around is a little weird.
And I think the hook could have had a better placement because, like,
yeah,
realistically,
I don't understand why the hook is there twice.
You put the hook, like, now you just have this hook jabbing into his stomach and his leg. Like, that doesn't work.
It's weird.
It's still weird here. So maybe the hook, if they were going to have it, could have went up top here, and perhaps they could have perched, like, made a little hole for Polly up here. So that way, you know, the hook's kind of got something to fall back onto. It's not stabbing him.
Yeah.
I don't know, just weird.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would realistically run around with that hook hanging off of their belt like that.
It's a decent sized hook.
It is. Anyway, so I think that's kind of all we have to say about him, but I'm going to splice in a close-up, and then we'll be back. So here's a closer look at Shipwreck. So again, he's got the same style box that we saw on Torpedo and Copperhead. So you've got a nice big picture of the figure up front, displaying the accessories in the corner, and then some nice expressive artwork of Shipwreck on the side, which you get a bigger shot of that portrait on the side of the box. On the back, another shot of the figure with the accessories, shows you how you can perch Polly on his wrist. And yeah, so not a bad box, but again, we're not here to talk about boxes, we're here to talk about the action figures, so let's take a closer look at Shipwreck here. So I don't know if you can see what I was talking about here with the face. It looks a little, like he looks a little malnourished or something. I think his cheeks are just really sunk in. He has like a skinnier face than I'm used to seeing. And like this is the face I'm thinking about when I think of Shipwreck. Either this face or the face in the cartoon. And you know, this one just lacked detail. He doesn't really look like a real person. Or this one here looks like it could have been modeled after a real guy. So I'm not opposed to the fact that they look more unique, but sometimes it's a little jarring. That's all I was saying. Anyway, there's the chest hair we were talking about earlier. It's not the most believable paint job. I think they painted arm hair on Outback earlier, and I think that looked a little better than this looks. That looks a little unnatural there. Anyway, sorry, I keep losing focus here, but he's a nice looking figure. You know, he's very much Shipwreck. I just had the version 1 Shipwreck from 85 out here a second ago. So this is what the original Shipwreck looked like. And you can see there he's got Polly just perched on his wrist. You know, she was a solid piece of green plastic with some yellow highlights. Now, I don't want to risk breaking her. I always put her on a wrist. Maybe there's a way to perch her on the shoulders or something, but I don't want to force the issue. So as far as I know, Polly just sits on his wrist. And you'll also see there's a little hook sculpted onto the side of his, what should be his belt, really, but it's on the side of his pants. And he came with a little hook on a string, so you could coil the string around there. And, yeah, he also came with a gun and whatever. I'm not sure if I have all of his vintage accessories or not. So this guy here, he's got this pistol, which I think he can holster it. Yeah, he's got a big holster here. He also has a smaller pistol that's holstered on this side. And then here's the hook we were talking about. So he's got the hook. It's on the side of his belt this time rather than his pants, so that makes more sense. But with this big, 4-pronged hook, or whatever you want to call it, like it looks like a pretty awkward thing to have dangling off the side of your leg. It looks like you would probably slice your leg and your jeans all up. But then he also has this rope, which it's a solid sculpted piece. You can't unravel it or anything. So clearly it's only really meant to go around his chest like this. And there's another little hook there, which lines up almost right where that other hook is. So that seems like an odd choice, because that doesn't seem like any better of a way to hang your hook. It's still pretty much right in the same awkward spot. Maybe even worse, because it might, catch you in the twig and berries there. But, yeah. So I don't know if he needs that hook. And as for the rope, so, Chad had mentioned he doesn't like how it's kind of floating around on there. It doesn't really bother me, but I wouldn't mind losing it either because it makes him look more like the vintage figure. But you need the rope in order for Polly to perch on his shoulder. He doesn't have a hole in his actual shoulder. The hole is on the rope itself. However, he does have a hole on his wrist. You see on that kind of white tape. So you can plug Polly directly into his arm, and then he can hold her like that. Now as for Polly, so you can see she's got more sculpted detail than the vintage one. Like she's got those nice little red eyes, the gray beak. They've got some yellow in there with the green. She's painted nice. But, I wish she had wings so she could actually spread her wings and you could maybe articulate them a little bit. Because let's just say you were playing with your toys and he said, go catch those keys off of the hook. You just have the parrot flying around like a missile instead of having its wings spread. So that's just like what we had to do when we were kids with the vintage Polly, but I feel the classified has kind of raised the bar for their animals now, so I wish it was a little bit better. And the last accessory, which we kind of touched on a little bit, but you probably couldn't see, was the hair. So I don't think they really needed to give us a version with his hat off, but I'm glad they did, I guess. It's nice to have the option. So you just plop this off, and there you see he's got kind of a misshapen, it's not like a plain bald head. You couldn't really play with him like this. But he does have this set of hair that you just tuck on like so. And now you've got an unhatted Shipwreck. And it looks pretty good. So I imagine I will probably display him with the hat, but I do like this look without the hat as well. So, trying to wrap this video up, so maybe I'll quickly bring out some of my Shipwrecks. Unlike these other characters that we've looked at today, where there's like a handful of different versions, Shipwreck has a whole lot of different versions. Like if you go to yojo.com, you can see all the various versions of Shipwreck that have come out over the years. From the vintage line, like the O-ring style, the only other Shipwreck I have is this one here, which I think came out in like 1998 perhaps. So this is him in a wetsuit himself, so he can go diving with Torpedo. So that's kind of a unique look for Shipwreck. Then into the modern era of the 4-inch figures. So the first one that they put out was very much his classic sailor outfit with Polly that perched on his wrist. He had all the same gun, the same hook, all that sort of stuff. We got another version of that figure here in a slightly different paint job. He's got a life jacket. He still has Polly. He's got the hook on the string. So this is pretty much what we got before with the vintage figure and all that sort of stuff. So we got this one here. Then I've got a couple of versions of him with what I think we refer to as his Devil's Due look. Because when Devil's Due took over the rights to the G.I. Joe comic book in the early 2000s, they kind of changed up Shipwreck's look, and they started giving him a knit cap and a cable knit sweater instead of the sailor's outfit. So he looked like this in the comic books. So they gave us an action figure version of him like that. We've also got the same figure in green. Now, mind you, you can remove this diving mask from his neck, so it's not stuck there, but it's an option, so he can dive as well. Another Shipwreck I have with the knit cap is this guy here. So this is, you know, I don't know, this looks like a pretty hardcore version of Shipwreck. His big machine gun, his big old vest. And then I also have a Tiger Force version of Shipwreck. And here you see we got a poly with her wings spread. So, yeah, if they're not going to give me articulated wings, or, you know, if I had to choose one set of wings over the other, I don't know if I prefer a poly with her wings spread or we're all tucked away, but it was cool that we got that option on at least a couple of Shipwreck figures. So there you go. I got a nice crew with this guy. He's a cool character. He's probably a fan favorite. He had a lot of personality in the cartoon because he was kind of voiced to mimic Jack Nicholson and everything. He was a funny character in the show. And yeah, I'm glad that we got him in the classified line. I'm guessing that we will probably get a Tiger Force repaint at some point. Fingers crossed. And yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about Shipwreck. Okay, so we're back.
We're back.
And that was it. So that's our newest G.I. Joes, and there'll be more to come. Because like I said, Rock and Roll is in the mail for me right now, so I'll have to review him soon. And, you know, there's so many pre-orders out, I can't even remember who
I can't even remember who I...
Like Dr. Mindbender is another one that I have out for pre-order from Hasbro that I forgot to mention earlier. Yeah, there's literally so many that who knows.
And for all you guys wondering out there, my Flint finally showed up. It was a couple days shy of 2 months. 2 months. So yeah. I finally got him. Yeah.
Yeah, he ordered Flint from Walmart.ca.
Which in stock.
You'd think, because Walmart is obviously a pretty big retailer, pretty reliable, and it was in stock. When you order things from Walmart, it's, you know, not as fast as Amazon maybe, but you expect to have it within a week type of thing. But yeah, you waited 2 months?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I am happy to have them, though.
Yes. Yeah, your collection's come along pretty good. All right, so let's wrap this up. So, but we'll be back with another episode very soon, because we're actually going to shoot another episode as soon as we're done with this one. So stay tuned for that. Why don't you wrap things up here?
Sure. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave us lots of comments. We enjoy interacting with you guys. And until next time, keep collecting.
Ciao.
Cool.
It's big.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like twice as long as the Hiss tank, I think. So God knows where I'm going to put it, but we'll see.
That's what she said.
Right.